School uniform debate, comparing and contrasting school uniforms in the United States and the United Kingdom. Currently in the US, as you can see from the chart on the right, 23% of public and private schools require students wear school uniforms. That means 77% don't. So just under a fourth of the schools in the United States have school uniform policies, so students have to wear school uniforms. Um, For public schools, the schools that have uniforms are usually lower class areas where most students are on free or reduced lunch. These are high poverty, low income areas. Um, Whereas in private schools, generally speaking, the students that attend private schools are on the wealthier side. So we have this system in the US where the kids wearing uniforms are usually either lower income or higher income. Overall, national law does not require students to wear uniforms in the U.S. It's not a requirement for schools. Um, the average annual cost to parents for school uniforms is $249. So that's for one student for 1 year. And the annual school uniform sales, so just across the board in the U.S., is $1.3 billion. So not all states authorize schools to implement uniform policies. As you can see from the map, it looks like about half of the states are allowing school uniforms. Um, and as I said before, they're mostly used in either high income or high poverty. So high income or low income areas in some of the richest and the poorest school districts, but not usually in middle class areas. In the lower income areas, school uniforms are generally implemented to prevent violence. They associate the way students are dressing with gangs, so they think that by instilling uniform policies, this will help um, eliminate gang violence in schools. Um, Unfortunately, this has deterred parents from sending their kids to these schools because they think that because students are wearing uniforms, it means that there's a lot of violence at the school, which isn't always the case. Across the ocean in the United Kingdom, school uniforms are a lot more prevalent. 82% of schools require uniforms, while 18% don't, which is almost a complete flip in the US. Um, but yeah, so that's a lot. Like the United States, national law does not require students to wear uniforms. Schools are just choosing to have uniform policies a lot more. Interestingly enough, the annual school uniform sales in the United Kingdom is $450 million, so about a third of the sales in the US. Um, Even though almost four times the percentage of students in the UK wear uniforms compared to the US, which is very interesting. Um, so across in the US and the UK, the uniforms are fairly similar. For boys in both the UK and US, you're going to have some black, tan, gray, navy pants, some nice dressier pants with a white polo shirt, whereas in the US, a lot of times you see plaid polo shirts. Um, and in the UK, that you're going to require a sports jacket or a blazer in secondary education, and also see school sweatshirts over there more for boys. Whereas in the US, you generally have more freedom to for what sweatshirt you would need to wear. Again, for girls, kind of the same. Pants or skirts, more dressier, and then a whiter plaid polo shirt with, in the UK, the school sweatshirt or cardigan. Interestingly enough, in the US, the uniforms are a little more specific and also a little rare. You don't have as many students wearing uniforms. So the prices are higher. You have to go to specific stores. Usually the uniforms are only sold at one or two stores, whereas in the UK, because the uniforms are more general and they span across multiple schools, the clothing becomes available at a lot more department stores, and they're carried in a lot of other stores, so there's more competition, so the prices are much cheaper.
Good morning to both
Good
of you.
morning.
I know you come down on opposite sides of this little uniform debate. And Michelle, I'll start with you because you think uniforms are a good idea for
I
students?
do, because I think the most important thing is it creates emotional safety at a school, which is pivotal to learning. It's going to reduce the bullying because kids are not going to pick on you on how you dress. Reduce it. Number two, in urban settings, it's critical because of gang affiliation will go down, but it also reduces distraction. It gets down to, let's focus on the thing we're supposed to be doing, called learning.
And not what we all did in junior high, which is
Yes.
stare at our closet and say, I have nothing to wear. But Robin,
Yes.
you take a different point of view on this.
I don't always think that uniforms are the answer. I think that at a time where teens and preteens want to express themselves, that clothes provide a vehicle, a benign vehicle, to allow them to express themselves and say, I'm different, without having to approach more risky ways of saying the same thing.
But do you think that individuality is something that shouldn't be stifled?
I love individuality, but I think what we need to do is do a new mindset. It's not the stuff you wear, it's the stuff on the inside. And let's start getting kids to be expressive in terms of their thoughts, their words, their deeds. They have 50,000 activities they're signed up for heaven's sakes. They can be expressive there. When you walk into school, let's be dressed for success and be prepared to learn.
But some people say the uniforms might actually have the opposite effect. In other words, if everyone's wearing the same thing, you get into a dynamic where kids are saying, oh, who wore it best? Who
That's
looks good in their
exactly
uniform?
how I feel. As a body image expert, I hear from students all the time that they feel that it allows for a lot of comparison. You think of the magazines that say who wore it best, pitting one celebrity against the other. So if you have a body that's a plus-size body, a curvier body, a very tall body, a very short body, those girls often feel that they don't look their best. And when you don't feel you look your best, your learning can also have some detrimental parts to it.
What about the expense of it, Michelle?
Well, first of all, what it also does is diminish that whole thing of equal playing. It's financially much safer for a parent. But also, I think we need to look at the why question. I work in schools all over the world, and the one thing that I do when I look into Korean schools, I work in Finland schools, everybody's dressed the same because the most important thing was about learning.
Well, it's an interesting discussion to have. Thank you so much.
You're
Two smart
welcome.
ladies to have it with.
Thank you for
Appreciate
having
it.
us.
So an interesting look at the pros and cons of school uniforms, kind of two experts going at it in the debate, and they have some interesting viewpoints and bring up some good topics. In the UK, you have a lot of the similar concerns and also advantages of having uniforms. I think one of the things they didn't address in that video was safety. That's one of the pros mentioned in a lot of United Kingdom schools, is that they're able to see who belongs in the school. They can, because all the kids are wearing the same thing, if they see someone not in uniform, then they know that that person shouldn't be in the school, and they can start asking some questions. In the video, they mentioned that it's more cost effective in the US to have uniforms. In the UK, it's even more so. They're even less expensive. Another pro is that they say students dress more professionally by wearing uniforms. It's like they're wearing, getting ready for their job, just like parents would need to dress up for their work. Going to school is like a student's work, so because they're dressed for success, they feel like they're there to learn. And that's also shown in secondary education when they have to start wearing, the men have to start wearing blazers. And a lot of the cons are the same too. Cutting down on creativity, not giving students the freedom to express themselves through what they wear. And also, again, with the who wore it best type of a thing, a child's comfort level can go down. They might not feel comfortable in the uniforms that are provided, in the way that they're cut and the way that they fit. Whereas if they're allowed to buy and wear their own clothes, they can get things that make them feel better and they feel more comfortable in, they maybe fit them better. So as you can see, this is a heavily contested debate. There's a lot of pros and cons. There are a lot of advantages to both sides. In the US and in the UK, we can see them both. But I think it's interesting and important to look at both countries because school uniforms are implemented in different volumes in both areas. And also implemented with different prices and a little bit different styles. So I would encourage you to think about where you stand on school uniforms, think about the pros and cons, and And also think about, to what extent do you think school uniforms should be implemented, if at all? Do you like the way it is right now? Would you change things? I encourage you to think about that.